Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 9th of January. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast right here on Arirang TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Satellite images show North Korea may be in the final stages of developing a submarine that can fire ballistic missiles, a step which would ramp up Pyongyang's threat level even further. French police converge on a small town north of Paris as special forces search for the gunmen who attacked Charlie Hebdo magazine. Plus, Korea and Japan agree to boost economic cooperation, but Seoul's import ban on seafood from Japan will remain in place until the government is sure the food is radiation-free. And we begin with fresh evidence that North Korea is able to, or very close to, having submarines that are capable of firing ballistic missiles. Now, given the level of stealth submarines have as they glide underwater, such a breakthrough would pose a high security threat to South Korea, Japan, and even the United States. Gwon-soa starts us off.
Satellite pictures posted on 38 North, a U.S.-based website devoted to analysis of North Korea, show the country is upgrading a submarine to make it capable of firing missiles. A rectangular opening around 4 meters long and 2 meters wide can be seen on the submarine, which sat in the North's Sinpo South shipyard at the time the photos were taken. Satellite imagery analyst Joseph Bermudez says the hull probably contains launch tubes that could fire up to 2 missiles. If the process is complete, the submarine may then be tested for land attack missile technology. If the analysis turns out to be correct, then North Korea's submarine development has taken a significant stride forward, posing a bigger threat to South Korea, Japan, and U.S. bases in the region, given that submarines are much harder to detect than other pieces of military hardware. It would also mean a whole new level of missile defense planning for nations at risk. However, experts believe North Korea still lacks technological experience, and constructing missile-capable ships would be expensive and very time-consuming. Although there appears to be no immediate threat, satellite imagery also showed workers moving around the shipyard's facility over the past 6 months. This raises concerns Pyongyang is actively working on a possible naval construction program. Gwon-soa, Arirang News.
Now, there are mixed signals out of Seoul and Washington about how advanced or not North Korea's nuclear missile technology actually is. The U.S. Defense Department says there's no hard evidence that shows Pyongyang has the technological capacity to develop miniaturized nuclear warheads that are small enough to fit on top of ballistic missiles. Now, earlier this week, the South Korean Defense Ministry said in its white paper that North Korea is closing in on mastering this technology. This is a big issue because if Pyongyang was able to make miniaturized warheads, they could technically be attached to ballistic missiles, which could potentially hit the mainland United States. Now, South Korea has completely ruled out co-hosting the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics with North Korea. Spokesman for the presidential office of Cheongwade, Min Kyung-uk, says the government will not be co-hosting the event with any other nation, and that includes the North. There had been speculation South Korea might make an offer to the North, as Seoul has been looking to open up high-level dialogue and improve its relations with Pyongyang. On Thursday, South Korea's unification minister, Ryu Kil-jae, flatly denied that any co-hosting offer would be made during any inter-Korean talks that might happen. Last month, North Korea offered to host some of the Olympic events at its Masikryong ski resort. The proposal came after the International Olympic Committee announced plans that would allow host cities to share events with other countries to save costs. North Korea says the anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaign by civic groups is a growing issue that is hindering the chance of holding inter-Korean talks. And in a notable turn, on the south side, Seoul's unification minister, Ryu Kil-jae, has shown a more flexible stance on the way the government can act, really, against those looking to fly messages across the border. Our Connie Kim reports.
South Korea's unification minister says a considerable number of lower-level talks will need to take place before the leaders of South and North Korea can sit down for a summit. Speaking before the National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee on Thursday, Minister Ryu Kil-jae touched upon a number of inter-Korean-related topics. On top of the possibility of a meeting between President Park Geun-hye and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, Ryu said the lower-level talks would also likely include the possible resumption of reunions for families separated by the Korean War. On the flying of anti-Pyongyang leaflets by South Korean activists across the border into the north, an act that has angered the North Korean regime, Ryu showed eased positions towards the government's stance of having no legal grounds to ban the launches. He added that they would try to prevent the launches if they posed a safety threat to residents in the area. The National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee passed a resolution that urges the government to take action against South Korean civic groups that fly anti-North Korea leaflets across the border. A group of South Korean activists flew 600,000 leaflets across the border on Monday. Now that prompted the North to call on the South Korean government to clearly state its stance on the issue. The prospects of a possible inter-Korean summit were raised at the start of the year when Kim Jong-un said in his New Year's address that Pyongyang was open to talks with Seoul. President Park Geun-hye echoed that sentiment in her New Year's speech, but the leaflet launches have soured the mood. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, despite their frosty relations, Korea and Japan have agreed that it's important to boost their economic cooperation. The two neighbours held high-level talks in Seoul on Thursday, and that included discussions on potentially lifting Korea's import ban on Japanese seafood. For all the details, here's our Hwang Sang-hee.
Following 4 hours of talks in Seoul on Thursday, senior officials from Korea and Japan agreed to continue their close economic cooperation. Korea's foreign ministry said the high-level dialogue was held to review and reaffirm the two neighbors' economic relations in their 50th year of normalizing diplomatic ties. A senior official said nearly an hour was spent discussing Korea's import ban on Japanese fisheries products, imposed after the Fukushima nuclear disaster in 2011. Japan's chief delegate Yasumasa Nagamine claimed Seoul is implementing stricter regulations on Tokyo than other countries and added the import ban could have a negative impact on their economic relations. To that, Korea's chief delegate An Chong-gi said it's important to assure the Korean public that Japanese seafood is safe before lifting the ban. He added the issue can be reviewed after Korean experts conduct a field inspection in Japan next week. The meeting comes amid thorny bilateral relations stemming from Japan's ongoing denial of its wartime atrocities. The Korean official said holding such a frank, constructive, high-level discussion in the beginning of the year in itself is a positive sign for the two neighbors. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Police in France are attempting to track down the two main suspects of the horrific terror attack in Paris that killed at least 12 people at the satirist magazine Charlie Hebdo. We're going to connect live to Eunice Kim at the News Centre for the latest on this story. Eunice, we're beginning to get a sense now, really, of just how massive this manhunt is.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. Good morning. The two brothers, Sharif and Said Kouachi, have managed to evade police for some 40 hours now. Police are zoning in on a wooded region in the region of Picardy, where there had been reports of the suspects being spotted. It is just after 2 a.m. over there, so security forces are using night vision tools and are backed by helicopters, but this isn't the only place they are searching. Authorities say 88,000 police and military personnel have been deployed to search through several towns in that northern region, all the way up to the border of Belgium. Now, earlier Thursday, investigators did flock to a gas gas station in the region after a station attendant reported that the brothers had taken gas and food at gunpoint before driving away earlier that morning. Officers also had sealed off the village of Longport and went house to house in search of the brothers. So the search, Mark, very much ongoing.
Yeah, and that search could take a long time because those woods are supposed to be huge, according to some reports I was reading earlier today. Now, these brothers were also on a US no-fly list. Not that unusual, really, but they were also, that means they were known to intelligence officials for years. Meanwhile, there was another fatal confrontation on Thursday involving a female police officer that had raised alarm, but police now believe that that really was unrelated to the assault on the magazine.
Yeah, that's right. A policewoman was fatally gunned down in the head south of Paris by a suspect described as wearing black clothes and a bulletproof vest. But authorities now say this appears to be a separate incident, not related to the Kouachi brothers. 2 arrests have been made in this case following an 8-hour search. Also on Thursday, the nation of France held a moment of silence at noon local time on a rare day of national mourning for the 12 victims of the attack and, of course, for the free speech that they had stood up for. And as you saw there, the iconic Eiffel Tower also dimmed for a time at 8 p.m. local time as a vigil continued at the Place de la République.
Yeah, it's extremely rare for France to ever turn off all the lights there of the Eiffel Tower, so it really is a remarkable sign of respect for those journalists. Now, let's turn our attention to Asia now, and Indonesian search teams are set to resume their operations in the Java Sea anytime now. And what they're going to do, they're going to be trying to lift the tail of that ill-fated AirAsia Flight 8501.
Yeah, that's right. Recovery teams had, of course, identified that tail on Wednesday, and they attempted to salvage it yesterday, but ran into bad weather and poor conditions. Let's go ahead and first hear from the Indonesian Navy diver who led the diving team that had identified the plane on the seabed.
The plane was split up, so the geosurvey's observation shows the position is flat on the seabed. It's no longer shaped like a plane.
Split and flat. Indonesia's Search and Rescue Agency coordinator Suryadi Supriyadi said he will use a balloon to try to prop up that tail in today's operation. Vessels with heavy lifting cranes with a capacity to lift up to 70 tons are on standby as well. Now, head of the rescue agency Bambang Solistio added that they could be used to lift this section and added that still finding the missing bodies did remain the main focus of his operation. Now, the tail section, of course, could hold the plane's black box. It is believed to be at a depth of about 30 meters and some 30 kilometers away from the plane's last known location. So we will be watching that throughout the day for you today.
Yeah, they certainly have a huge task still on their hands. Well, thank you ever so much, Eunice, and we'll see you back again at noon.
Sure thing.
That a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Samsung Electronics says it expects its operating profit fell by almost 40% in the final quarter of 2014. That's compared to the same period the previous year. And although the figures make pretty grim reading, some analysts were expecting worse than that, as the Korean firm's once booming mobile division is having a really rather rough time of it lately. Ji Myung-gil reports.
In a guidance report released on Thursday, Samsung Electronics said its operating profit will likely be $4.7 billion in the October to December period of 2014, beating expectations. However, that would also mean that profits were down almost 37.5% from a year earlier, marking the first annual profit decline since 2011.
The main reason for the profit decline was due to shrinking smartphone profits as Samsung's Galaxy line struggles to compete with Apple's iPhone and cheaper Chinese rivals. Increased marketing costs also contributed to the decline in operating profits.
But the fourth quarter figure still marks a rebound from the company's third quarter profits of $3.6 billion, which was Samsung's lowest quarterly profit in more than 3 years. Fourth quarter sales likely fell more than 12% on year to some $47 billion, but that's up $4.5 billion from the previous quarter. Analysts presume Samsung's semiconductor division performed better than the cash cow mobile business in the October to December period, aided by a rise in demand for memory chips that go into personal computers and smartphones. Analysts say Samsung's mobile business will better this year.
Although the world's smartphone market is still competitive, we expect Samsung to regain its footing with the upcoming release of the Galaxy 6 smartphone. Samsung has also improved its lower-tier smartphone lineups to retain its market share and boost profits.
The analyst also predicted that sales of semiconductors and advanced display panels will pick up thanks to the favorable market conditions. Although Samsung did not provide a breakdown of its divisional profits, analysts expect a better picture of Samsung's overall performance once the final earning figures are released later this month. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
And Samsung Electronics is one of the major players at this year's Consumer Electronics Show that's taking place right now in Las Vegas. Our Kim Ji-yeon shows us how the latest and hottest gadgets are getting smarter, more wearable, and even more connected.
What should I wear? It's a question people constantly ask themselves after setting foot in the 2015 International Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. Perhaps a drone for your wrist that unfolds and takes flight on your command to capture a Kodak moment. Or something that helps you make the most of your time in the gym, tracking your heartbeat and movements. And who needs a chauffeur when you can order your BMW to pick you up right away?
BMW, pick me up. It's not science fiction anymore. The age of the Internet of Things has already started.
Wearable smart devices are increasingly in the spotlight. Companies present gadgets in line with the Internet of Things, where devices are talking to each other across the Internet. Companies believe that everything we touch or interact with will be connected to the Internet in the next several years. Samsung Electronics set a goal of having all of its devices, including home appliances, connected to the web by 2020.
I'm coming home.
And the climate for business looks bright with the rising demand for smart home devices. U.S.-based Strategy Analytics forecasts the global market for smart homes to grow more than $100 billion by 2019. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Right, well, it's Friday, January 9th here in Korea, so we're almost through the first full week anyway of 2015. So you might be wondering what's in store for the nation's presidential office, the Parliament and the main political parties this year, 2015. For a rundown of the year's biggest political events and what kind of impact they're going to have on the public, our Park Ji-won reports.
The first major political event of the year will be on February 8th. That's when the main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, will hold a convention to select a new party leader and Supreme Council members. Up until last July, the opposition party was led by two co-leaders, Kim Han-gil and former presidential candidate An Chol-soo. However, the party faltered in July's by-elections and has been led by interim leader Moon Hee-sang ever since. Former presidential candidate Moon Jae-in and Park Ji-won, a close aide to former President Kim Dae-jung, will go head-to-head for chairmanship of the party in February. On April 29th, by-elections will be held for the three parliamentary seats that turned vacant when the minor opposition Unified Progressive Party was disbanded in December. These are three electoral districts in which traditionally progressive parties have been successful in the past. If the ruling party loses all three this time around, though, it could be seen as a referendum on the incumbent administration. In May, both the ruling and opposition parties will elect their new floor leaders. For the ruling Saenuri Party, an internal strife between supporters of President Park and those who don't stand with her has widened. Whoever replaces current floor leader Lee Wan-gu, who's in the Park Geun-hye camp, will have a big influence on the relationship between the party and the presidential office. Later on in the summer, the minor Progressive Justice Party will elect its new leader. Experts say the most watched of the party elections this year will be when the new floor leaders are picked in May.
The presidential office can push through its agenda at Parliament so long as the floor leaders cooperate. For the president, the floor leader is more important than the party leader because the floor leader leads legislative duties. If the ruling party's new floor leader comes from outside President Park's support base, it will be a tough year for the presidential office.
The government aims to forge ahead with reforms aimed at a more flexible labor market, at state agencies, and at the national pension system. These are issues that are controversial, so they require a cautious approach to minimize backlash. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the 2015 Asian Cup, which kicks off later today. Now, for the Korean national football team, their first group stage match kicks off on Saturday against Oman in their first step towards trying to win their first Asian Cup title in 55 years. Now, ranking-wise, the 69th ranked Korean national team is ahead of the 93rd ranked Oman and also has a winning record of 3 wins and a loss. And with some of the key players in Oman injured, it seems to be a rather smooth sailing for the Taeguk Warriors. But Oman showed some offensive power, going undefeated during the Asian Cup qualifier, winning 4 matches and drawing twice while scoring 7 goals and allowing just 1. Of course, with Ki Sung-young leading the way as the captain and Lee Chung-young as the vice captain, the national team looks to get a jump start on their quest for the Asian Cup title. Now, if Kim Yeon-ah is the figure queen, then 18-year-old Park So-yeon will soon be called the figure princess, especially with the kind of performance she showed during the 2015 National Figure Skating Championship in Seoul. Now, with many considering her the favorite to win the women's single gold during the National Figure Skating Championship, she didn't disappoint on her first day of competition, scoring a respectable 60.40 during the short program and taking a lead. With the free skating performance taking place later today, she hopes to win her first gold medal in the event, with her mentor Kim Yeon-ah set to hand out the medals as well. Now, the interest in Major League Baseball here in the nation has skyrocketed ever since Lee Hyun-jin arrived in LA 3 years ago and dominated the Major League hitters. And tomorrow he's leaving to LA once again in preparations for the 2015 season. Now, the hefty lefty, who spent a busy offseason in Korea, will leave to LA tomorrow as he begins his private training before spring training begins in February. The 28-year-old will arrive in Los Angeles and begin working out at the Boris Corporation Training Center, then join the Dodgers in Arizona for spring camp. Now, winning 13 and 14 games respectively in his first 2 seasons, Lee Hyun-jin looks to win at least 15 games in the 2015 season. Now, Lee Hyun-jin became the first pitcher in the KBO to head over to the majors, and now Nexen Heroes Kang Jung-ho hopes to become the first position player from the KBO to play in the majors. But is he close to a deal with the Pirates? Well, his agent Alan Nero certainly thinks so, expressing confidence that they will have an agreement with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And Nero added that the process has been positive and that general manager Neil Huntington has been trying very hard to come to the table with a deal. Meanwhile, it's reported that Kang Jung-ho is seeking a 4-year deal worth around $15 million. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Now the cold will finally ease up and temperatures will climb to average, bouncing back to positives this afternoon. Though the skies will not be as sunny as yesterday, a few patches of clouds will be hanging around throughout the day. And cold wave watch is still in effect for some parts, which should be lifted as the day moves along. And dry weather advisory has been upgraded to warning in some parts of the east, so be extra careful with fire. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the high in Seoul will climb up to 2. Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 7 and 6, and Busan will reach 8 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will rise to 10, while Daejeon and Dokdo will be getting up to 5 later in the day. Now, by tomorrow, we'll notice much warmer conditions with highs pushing into near 5. Then a bit cooler on Sunday, and next week looks to be promising under a good amount of sunshine. But that's all for now. Let's send it back to Mark in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, as always, Jian, for the weather. And that's all we have for now. There are plenty more stories online, and it's also worth checking out our smartphone app for all the latest news and also all our programs as well. And we'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.